Morning, everybody. So I want to welcome a gentleman that I had the privilege of meeting in 2014 when I was invited to the White House. And this individual, his magnanimity was just overwhelming. He was walking around shaking everyone's hand with an AmeriCorps Vista button about the size of this big. I was like, who's this brother, man? And then actually, a mutual friend of ours, Suhaila Aziz, who worked at a nonprofit that I was sitting on the board of, she had this opportunity to intern at the White House. And she says, oh, that's Paul Monteiro. So at this event at the White House, I meet Paul Monteiro. And he was actually, at the time, in transition. He was actually, at one point in time, at that time, the director at the White House for, one of the directors for the White House of Public Engagement. And he just got the position as the director for AmeriCorps Vista. And in that evening, it was a short span. It's like I knew there's this kind of kinship that we had. And there's individuals that you meet in your life, right, where you knew, you've known, you've walked this earth before. And they say there's a tradition that says when all the souls are created, all from beginning to end, they're aligned in ranks. So when you see somebody and goes, I never met you, but I know you, they say that that was one of the indicators that you were together in that same row with that other soul when everything was created. And I knew this of this gentleman, Paul Monteiro, who currently now is the director for community relations with the Department of Justice. So he's giving an opening and a welcome for you all today on this Thursday. So without further ado, good colleague of mine, Paul Monteiro.
Good morning, boosters. Can we have another round for this man right here, one of the hardest working men out? And while you're in the clapping mood, keep it going for Tia. I just need to acknowledge Tia. Michael Funk, the director of the After School Division, and Dr. Ellaby, the deputy superintendent of student support. Give it up. I'm going to be real brief because I think we are all excited to hear from the keynote speaker this morning. I just had a few things I wanted to share. And as Diego mentioned, I'm currently at the Department of Justice as head of the Community Relations Service. I'm not even going to ask people to raise their hands. It's a program I think most people have never heard of. It was written into the Civil Rights Act of 1964 under the assumption you now have a law that says you can't discriminate based on race in public accommodations. That's not going to go over by itself real smoothly until you have people that deploy to hotspots where you have racial conflict to try and mediate things in a nonviolent way. So from 1964 to today, certainly we haven't as a country figured out this issue of racial conflict and strife. And as you look at the news, it's a busy time for our department as we try to get ahead of community conflict before it mushrooms into violence, whether it's because of a law enforcement involved shooting, animus against a racial group, someone's sexual orientation, on and on and on. We have offices around the country. I just want to put that in front of you because you may need our services at some point, depending on where you're from. So look us up at the Department of Justice, justice.gov/CRS. I've had the privilege of working for the president, as Diego mentioned, for many years. I actually started with him in 2006 when he was a senator in D.C. And I remember him grappling sort of in 2006, really into 2007, should he run for president? I mean, at the time, there were a lot of folks that thought it was a naive but well-intentioned idea, but there was no way in the world a black man named Barack Hussein Obama was going to be elected president. So he would do these sessions after hours, with some of the staff to really think through the pros and cons of whether it's a good idea to go forward or not. And there were good reasons to do it. There were bad reasons, not to do it. But one of the most compelling arguments that I think ultimately pushed him to run was one of his senior advisors said, think of how a young man on the south side of Chicago would see himself differently if you ran. Not even if you won, but if you ran. And, he's not a person who's usually at a loss for words. He didn't say anything for a while. He thought about it. And he ultimately said, that would be worth it. And from then till now, the work he's been doing, the name, as Jesse talked about yesterday, the My Brother's Keeper initiative, it's something that's motivated him in his personal life, knowing the fallout from not having his father in his life, but seeing the fallout in communities across the country when families aren't intact, when the father's not around, when young men are not given opportunities to even see something different from what's around their immediate daily experiences and realities. So My Brother's Keeper was intentionally built in a way to outlast this administration. It was intentionally built in a way, knowing many of you are involved in this work anyway. You've been involved before the administration. You'll be involved after the administration. It was intentionally built to use the bully pulpit of government, but to spur more attention, more support, and more commitment, but not to be dependent on government. At a time where we see, 60-something years since Brown versus Board of Education, similar, if not worse, racial segregation in our schools. I was reading Bob Putnam's book, Our Kids. You should check it out. He talks about the increasing economic segregation that's going on in this country, where people of one class will never even meet someone of another class because of the school they go to, the place they worship, the place they shop, the place they vacation. Two separate societies living in the same place. And you see what happens when you have that separate society in other countries. And now we sort of have that happening here in America. And unless we address that, unless we give these young people opportunities to do better than what they inherited, and not be limited by the life choices of their parents, we're all going to be paying for that as a country. In 267 days, you'll have a new president. And that president may have different priorities. And that's why we're all committed to making sure we institutionalize as much of the work of My Brother's Keeper as we can. And again, knowing that even after this administration ends, as I look around this room, we have so many allies in this collective work to create opportunity for young men and boys of color, but really youth of all backgrounds. So if anything, our keynote speaker is living proof that anything's possible. I'm encouraged, I'm fired up to be here to share a bit about My Brother's Keeper, and I look forward to joining you later this evening. Thank you so much for having me.